spring 2023 meant a baby boom at the Greensboro Science Center, with 5 species giving birth in the course of just a few weeks. Kelly is the lead zookeeper over Red Pandas, and we have a pretty special birth.
We do. So we're excited to announce that our pandas gave birth to a male and female cub on May 26th.
And how are they doing so far?
They're doing great. It's really exciting because we're offering the public to come view them and do some public feedings at, right now, 11:45 a.m. and 3 p.m. So they're a lot of fun to watch.
And they're just like newborn human babies. They need to be fed often and in small amounts.
Yes, so not a lot of sleep, just like human babies.
Yeah, how does that work? So are people coming in, round the clock to take care of these babies?
Pretty much. So we're kind of adjusting our schedule. We have a panda care team. We're pretty comfortable after Ravi of last year, so it's kind of the same team, and we're taking care of them around the clock.
And here we are on June the 20th. This is Ravi's first birthday, right?
It is, so it's a really exciting day. So we're going to give him a special cake, and we have some enrichment for him, and we're really excited, and he seems to be excited too.
Okay, so how's mom doing after the birth?
She's doing great. She's just living her best life and went right back to normal, so yeah.
And you keep them separate. Why?
The babies and her. Unfortunately, Usha's proven to be not the best mother and make the best choices. So we did give her a chance this time, and we started noticing some questionable behaviors. We reached out to the species survival plan, and they kind of gave us the go-ahead to hand rear again, unfortunately.
And so they're being kept separate. What is kind of the long-term goal, or what will happen over the next few months and up to a year?
So usually once they get a little bit bigger, around 4 months, they'll kind of move to the holding space, and hopefully the public can view them in that space like they did Ravi. We do have enough space with our Revolution Ridge that our pandas can kind of be swapped around, and they can live together for a while here.
And would there be any chance that maybe Ravi might live with these siblings?
That would be an awesome goal. I don't know if anyone's ever done that before, but it would be really exciting.
And so how will we see them change as they grow, as they get bigger?
So usually at about 2 months, they're almost completely red, and you'll start seeing that striping in their tails. They're born gray, and they slowly start turning red and black as they age. So, and usually by about 10 months, they're fully grown. So Ravi's fully grown now. So he looks just like his parents. And they just get cuter, I think, as they grow.
What surprises people most, or surprised you most about learning about red pandas?
They're a lot of work. I love that about them because of their very specific diet in the wild, where they're just pretty much eating bamboo. It's taken a lot of different studies to kind of find out what works best for red pandas, and especially hand-rearing red pandas. So it's been a journey.
But they clearly are very happy here. Yes. I mean, now we've had 3 babies in the course of a year.
It's really exciting. I actually think we were the first facility to have offspring this year, so that's really awesome.
So much fun. Yeah. And when will we know names, and how does that process work?
I'm not sure yet. We're hoping that either we'll do like a public contest, or maybe our donor, or I'll get to name them. So it's kind of up in the air. So hopefully soon they'll have some names.
Just more to keep watching. Keep visiting, keep watching on social media.
Fingers crossed.
Okay, we have a special treat because we're actually inside the holding area with hippos, which is why we are wearing our mask. I'm with the lead keeper of the Pygmy Hippos, Mike. Hi, how are you?
Very well. How are you today?
So good, because we're getting a close-up view of Huckleberry. Tell us about Huckleberry.
So Huckleberry is our baby Pygmy Hippo. She was born last month in May, and she is the daughter of Ralph, our male Pygmy Hippo, and Hollyberry, our female, who baby is now with right now. That baby's gaining about a pound to a pound and a half every day, just drinking mom's milk, nursing with mom, and just getting all those fat baby rolls.
And so when will she be full grown?
So full grown about a year to 18 months, and in about 5 months she'll be about 120 pounds.
So right now she's just with mom. Is that how it will stay?
It'll stay like that for quite some time. If mom and baby get along, once baby's fully grown and an adult, we'll keep them together until Holly has a date set up with another hippo at another institution, and we'll send her away.
Okay, and then will Holly and Ralph be reunited at that point?
Yes, we'll put Ralph and Hollyberry back together once Huckleberry's on her way somewhere else, and hopefully we'll have another beautiful baby.
I think it's interesting because you really need to see them in person to appreciate the size. I think sometimes even we look at pictures, we think of a hippo and we think of the giant hippos, and they still weigh quite a bit, and they're pretty aggressive and can be just as dangerous, but they're a lot smaller.
Yeah, so they're about a quarter of the size of a river hippo that you see on all the National Geographic shows. So you think Pygmy Hippo, you have an idea, but until you see the size and then you hear the weight of 550 pounds for Holly, about 600 pounds for Ralph, you really doesn't do them justice by just seeing a photo.
Yeah, you got to see them in person for sure. What has been the most interesting thing for you learning about these animals?
Definitely all the things Holly and Ralph let us train them. So Holly, we got her on ultrasound training pretty early on, and towards the last 3-4 months, she was cool as a cucumber with ultrasound, didn't really matter, and we could just do many sessions of that with many visitors coming to see the progress of the baby in utero.
So cute. They're lots of fun. We're just going to have to look at them some more. Macy is also taking care of some babies at the Science Center, 2 baby Binturongs.
Yes, we have 2 baby Binturongs that were born on May 5th. We have a male and a female, Bianca and Monty.
And they are so cute. Now, what is a Binturong? Could tell us where they're from, what they're like.
Yeah, so Binturongs are really unique creatures. A lot of people have not heard about them. They are part of the Viverridae family, which means they're also related to civets and genets, if you've ever heard of those. They get the nickname bearcat. They do kind of look a little bit like a bear and a little bit like a cat. They weigh a little over 30 pounds and have really coarse, dark hair. They're native to Central and Southeastern Asia, and they're arboreal creatures that are native to like really dense rainforests, so they love to stay up in the trees, mostly nocturnal, so lots of sleep during the day.
Is this the first Binturong birth at the Greensboro Science Center?
It is, and we're very excited to have them.
And so I noticed they're not with mom or dad right now. Why is that?
Yeah, so that's correct. So Susan was a first-time mom, and unfortunately with first-time moms, it's not super uncommon for them to maybe not necessarily know what they're doing or take interest in their babies. And so she did give birth to 2 babies, and we watched her with them for the first few hours that she had them, but unfortunately she wasn't trying to really nurse them. She didn't seem to have a whole lot of interest in them, and she wasn't really keeping them warm at all, wasn't grooming them. So we did go in and decide to hand raise them just to make sure that they were going to be able to grow and get everything that they needed.
And so how's mom doing now?
She's doing great. She's actually behind us sleeping out here on exhibit. She's doing really well, and the babies are kept in a holding space so she's able to see them, hear them. She's doing really good.
And so the babies, how long till they're full grown? Kind of what is their rate of growth?
They grow really fast. They're getting really independent really quickly. They don't hit like their sexual maturity until they're about a year and a half, so they still have a lot of growing to do. They're only like a couple pounds right now, so still relatively small and growing quickly. And
will they stay here at the Science Center? What is kind of their path?
So we don't really have any official plans yet. It's a possibility that they could stay here, but if the SSP does recommend any breeding for us, they could go off to another facility, either with other matches or if anybody opens up new Binturong exhibits and needs bents. It all depends on where the SSP tells us for them to go. But for now, they are staying here.
And what about mom and dad? Will they get back together soon?
That also is still kind of up in the air. We don't really know yet. We're waiting on the SSP to tell us whether they have another breeding rec. If they do get another breeding recommendation, they will go back together, so for possible baby events in the future. But for now, they are being kept separate just because we don't know if we have that recommendation yet.
Right.
Yeah.
And what is the most interesting thing to you about these animals?
Oh man, it could be a couple things. The first thing that's really interesting, they have a prehensile tail. So the babies is actually a really cool fact. The babies, when they're born, their tails are completely prehensile, meaning that they can almost hang from them. It's literally like another limb. But the adults, as they get older, they lose a little bit of that complete prehensileness. So the adults still have really prehensile tails that they use to wrap around branches and still help them climb, but they can't necessarily hang all their body weight from it. But it is a really cool feature that they have.
Well, they are a really fun animal, and I want to tell people where to find them at the Science Center because they're a little bit hidden off the beaten path.
Yes, yeah. So they're over like back behind our barnyard area.
You can hear the roosters, right?
Yeah. Yes, yep. You can hear the roosters. If you hear the roosters, keep going.
One of the babies born at the Science Center was born underwater, and Josh got to see it. Tell us about Kiwi's birth.
Kiwi was born on May 3rd. It's actually the start of all the babies here at GSC. She was a baby before it was cool. And she is a white-spotted river ray.
Okay, so did you know that mom was pregnant?
We had a hunch, but we really didn't know for sure. We actually just kind of thought she was a little bit fat, but turns out she had a baby.
And so you actually saw it, right?
Yes. Yes, I was putting leaves into the tank for them to play with, and mother came up, started playing with the leaves, and baby popped out.
And suddenly there were two.
Yep.
All right, so Kiwi is her name. And when she was born, she was about how big?
She was 65 grams, which is about the size of a large cookie.
Okay. That sounds good. And she's grown how much since then?
She's only grown a little bit, but she has probably grown about 20% of that initial size.
Okay. So growing pretty quickly. And any idea when she'll be full grown?
They can reach their full size in about 1.5 to 2 years. In fact, her mother's only a little over 3 years old.
Okay. And so she's hanging out in kind of a protected area right now. Why is that?
We want to make sure that she gets all the food that she needs so she doesn't have any tank mates that will steal her food. And we want to keep a close eye on her and make sure she doesn't get lost in the exhibit. So this is a great way to keep her isolated.
What does she eat?
She eats a mixture of things. Currently, she is favoring mealworms and crayfish legs, but she'll eat different shrimp, other crustaceans, worms, pretty much anything we have we'll try.
Is she pretty receptive to you feeding her and to kind of interacting with her?
She does come to interact, but she is a picky eater. So if she comes over and finds something she doesn't like, she will spit it back in your face.
So she's a typical toddler.
Yes. Typical toddler.
What do you like most about this species?
I think they're pretty unique because not only are they a freshwater stingray, but they, unlike other stingrays that have just one venomous barb or maybe two, they actually have venomous spines going all along their body. So along with that barb, they are covered in little spikes.
So do you have to be more careful when interacting with her?
Yes, much more careful and make sure that she's comfortable with people too. If she was afraid of me, that wouldn't be very safe.
That's what you do. You build those relationships.
That's correct.
Katie has the distinction of the Science Center of taking care of the most babies. About how many babies are you currently caring for right now?
So right now we probably have about anywhere from 50 to 75, but I had about a couple weeks ago up to 300.
And you're talking about?
Seahorse babies.
Tell us about the seahorses here at the Science Center.
So we actually have the Potbelly Seahorses here, which are Hippocampus abdominalis. They're the largest species of seahorses in the world. And just like any other species of seahorse, dad is the one who carries the babies. And their kind of life plan is they produce so many offspring, so they can produce up to 1,000 in one kind of birth event, but only about up to 1% of that will actually survive out in the wild. So they have to produce so many of them for a few to actually make it to adulthood.
Now, in captivity, they do slightly better.
Yes, so we have about anywhere from 5 to 10%. It's their sex rate, depending on all of the factors that lead into, was the dad new dad? Did he give kind of like a partial birth? Did mom transfer all of her eggs over to one male, or was it 2 separate males? When did they get birth, and how quickly we're able to capture the fry from them?
And there's a lot of research kind of happening into the best way to care for these little fry.
Absolutely. So our entire industry is always evolving. So we're always learning more and more. So we're learning that now adding a probiotic in with their food will actually help increase their survival rate when they're young. So we're actually doing that daily for them twice a day.
All right, so when they're born, they're about how big?
They're only about 1 millimeter, so they're like this big. And we actually have about 1.5-week-olds now. We have 3 different clutches, so we have one that are almost a month and a half, going on 2 months, about a 1-month clutch, and then the last clutch was born last Monday. So
how fast do they grow?
So they tend to grow, if you're not looking at them every day, they kind of look like they're growing a little slow, but they actually kind of grow fast for how big they are. So they'll get about full grown anywhere from 6 to 9 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is full grown? How big is that?
So the adults can range anywhere from about this big. Our females typically get bigger, and it's just kind of how the species is. Our females will kind of max out at about, I feel like, anywhere from 6 to 12 inches.
Now, if you're looking at the seahorses on exhibit, you might see them doing a mating ritual. Can you tell people about that?
Absolutely. So what happens is and this is for all seahorses, they all do a courtship dance. And so it's because the dad has to accept the eggs from the mom, so she has to choose her partner, and they'll actually dance in the exhibit and they'll twirl around each other. And when the female decides to deposit, she'll actually sit right over his pouch and he'll open up and she'll deposit those eggs into him. So we get a lot of dancing in the mornings, especially after we had just had like a clutch born. We'll get a lot more activity from that. So.
Okay, they're potbelly, so how can you tell that they actually have had eggs deposited in the male?
So it's kind of tricky with the potbellies, just because the males tend to be a little more flamboyant with their pouches, because they can control how they inflate and deflate them. They will actually take in water to inflate their pouches, and that's one way they kind of court the females of like, hey, look at my big, pouch. I can have a lot of eggs in here. But every once in a while, I'll kind of notice that a certain male won't deflate his pouch, inflate it throughout the day, and that's when I really start keeping an eye on that one in particular individual.
Okay, and then does he stay on exhibit, or do you try to separate him so that you can capture the fry?
So unfortunately, our exhibit isn't the best for capturing out males without stressing them out too much. So I would much rather him give birth on exhibit and not be stressed out during the event, because birthing is actually stressful for them. It is just, they go through, the contractions just like we do, and they will expel the fry from their pouches. So it can be stressful for them, and I don't want to add any more to that.
And that's a pretty big treat if you ever get to see that, and for sure.
It is. I unfortunately haven't seen it because they usually do it overnight, and so sometimes I'll keep a moonlight on them, and so that kind of cues in. They actually are tied into the lunar cycle, so about every 28 days on the full moon, I believe it is when they typically give birth.
Very true. What is your favorite thing about seahorses?
I love all the personality of them, and you wouldn't necessarily notice that just because, they're not the best swimmers, but each seahorse has their own personality. We used to have a female individual that we kind of nicknamed amongst the staff, but she would always sit in the bubble and have this gorgeous Siri out, which are those long tendrils, yes, and she would just sit out there right perfectly in front of the public, and everyone would ooh at her, and she was one of our favorites.
And they're still a threatened species, is that right?
Yes, they are. So these are actually a SSP species, meaning it's a species survival plan. So our AZA organization, which is the community that kind of governs all of the industry and sets standards for us, has a genetics program where they track and they actually suggest certain pairs to breed, so we keep the genetic line healthy and happy within the facilities, and that also allows us to then surplus and provide other facilities the opportunity to display them because we're breeding them here.
Lovely. Well, you have a lot of babies to take care of, so thanks for spending some time with us.
Absolutely. It was great talking with you guys.
The best way to see and learn about all these babies, visit the Greensboro Science Center, of course, open 7 days a week. Find out more and plan your visit at greensboroscience.org.